The marvelous, maravillosa Mayra Leal is here. Mayra, how are you?
I'm doing well. So good. Thank you so much for having me today on your podcast. I'm super grateful. Thank you.
Oh my God, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know. It has been a long time.
The first time I ever saw you was on the big screen,
Yeah.
but most of the times that I've seen you have been in person at parties, hanging out, more in my personal world. So it was an honor and privilege to get to know you personally and spend a lot of time with you. And I always felt a kindred spirit since you and I are both from Texas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started this podcast as this creative forum for creative people and explore how we balance like balance our lives using creativity, not just in show business, but just our lives in general. So I wanted to talk to you about your journey into show business and beyond.
As I've shared with you in the past, I'm not currently pursuing the arts. I kind of took a little break from that whole world, but I feel I'm a firm believer that we are creators of our lives. And so I'm currently embarked on probably the greatest project of my lifetime, which is the Myra project. I'd say it's called. So, just my personal development, my self-healing journey essentially. And I am essentially creating the best possible version of myself. So I'm not physically, working on anything, but internally, spiritually, I am creating. I'm creating my world. How I'd like to see my world, my external world. So I really firmly believe that it's necessary to go inside within in order to change our external circumstances. So I'm creating.
Oh, it's an honor to have you on the mic, and it's actually really great to hear you step away from a different world and work on yourself. We're talking about a true like human, like your life is completely like your focus and priority now is you want to live your best life.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to show up as the best possible version of myself in the world and my relationships and my work. You know, um, I think it's absolutely necessary. And when we can, go within and heal those things that we may have within us that, may keep us from living a truly blissful, joyful, peaceful life. um I think it's just important to really tend to that part of ourselves, to really see the world in a different way. And ever since I started this journey, like, it's just amazing. You start to think differently, and therefore your external circumstances, they may be the same, but you see it differently. You have a different perspective. You are able to, gracefully get through maybe that same situation because you just perceive it in a different light. You know what I'm saying?
I absolutely understand. And before we jump into the transition,
Yeah, yeah.
I want to turn the clock back and
Let's
go
do it.
back in time.
Yeah.
The first time I ever saw you, I'm sure like many people, was in a movie called Machete.
Yeah.
And what was
Fond
it like?
memories, fond memories.
What was it like working on Machete?
Well, what I recall, it was honestly an amazing experience. It was, gosh, I was so young. I think I was 22, 23. I'm now 34. So it's been some time. And I mean, I just remember being so elated and so like in awe of, being a part of such a big production. Like, oh my gosh, they chose me. And like, this is the beginning of my amazing, actress career, and I've made it. I had this idea that I had made it because I was on this film, but little did I know that I was still going to have to work really, really hard after that. But anyway, sorry, I digress. I remember it being a beautiful experience, an amazing experience. Danny Trejo was super supportive. I remember being so nervous. I mean, and rightfully so. I'm like in my birth suit in front of all of these humans. And And they
That's
told me that it
right.
was going
That's
to be a
right.
closed set, but it wasn't really a closed set. I mean, unless they consider like, 20 plus people a closed set. But so it was, yeah, it was slightly nerve wracking. But yeah, Danny, since my scene was with him mostly, he was super supportive and definitely offered some little nuggets of wisdom, I remember. And yeah, so that was my Machete experience. It was, yeah, when I don't really think about those things any longer just because I'm so far removed from that world, it
Right.
seems like, it feels like anyway. So when I do, thank you so much for asking, it creates this like, how fun that time was, you know? I didn't realize I was creating my reality then. I was very much unaware of myself. So I think I was creating by default, you know? I didn't really have any awareness at all whatsoever of myself.
What were you doing before Machete? Were you already acting? Like, where did you grow up exactly in Texas?
I grew up in Houston, Texas, and
H-Town.
yeah. So I grew up in Houston. I graduated from Bel Air High School. I went to the University of Houston, and um, throughout life, at a young age, I wanted to be either a model or an actress, and I dreamt about it. And I would go to these, those scam auditions. I don't know if if you're familiar, but they say that you can be in Disney or whatever it is, and then you go to the audition, and then they ask you for all this crazy, money type of deal. Anyway, so I went to those types of things. Like I really wanted to become this actress or model, and it wasn't until I turned 18 that the stars aligned, and I met agent in Houston, coincidentally, who was a family friend, and she was actually starting her acting agency at that time. And I expressed to her that I wanted to become an actress, and she's like, "You're signed." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And so a few weeks, months later, I'm like auditioning for these infomercials, commercials, etc. And I start working pretty quickly. And meanwhile, I'm going to school. I'm going to college, studying math and Italian studies. Though later, I ended up changing all of that and minored in math and majored in communications. And but so yeah, I mean, I was juggling this whole scholar like education, like my education, and this whole wanting to be an actress thing. And I think at 21 I got this big job, I thought anyway, for the National Geographic Channel. It's a show called Locked Up Abroad, and I was flown over to Bangladesh and shot this show there. And I was like, oh my gosh. Then I thought I made it, and then little did I know, I didn't work, I think, for 2 years after that. and
Oh my goodness.
and then
I
yeah, and
love
then
that show. I have to watch your episode.
yeah, I'm so young, it's crazy. Yeah, it was a long time ago, but it was
So
so fun.
those were reenactments of real cases.
Yes. Yeah.
And what was the case why were you locked up in your story?
Well, in my story, this girl who coincidentally was from Houston, apparently, which is why the National Geographic felt that it was necessary to come to Houston and shoot in Houston, part in Houston, part in Bangladesh, where it all went down. So this woman by the name of Leah, she apparently, I mean, I'm probably going to butcher her story because it's been so long, but I think she wanted to go to school, she needed money or something. And so a friend of hers was working with this gentleman, and Leah was noticing that her friend was making money, and so like asked her about it. And I guess the friend wasn't forthcoming at first, like as to how she was actually making this money. And so Leah agreed to go to this lunch and speak to the gentleman because she was interested in whatever it was that they were doing. And it turned out that they were actually smuggling heroin. And but so the guy offered her $20,000 or something crazy like that, to just do this one job. And so she said yes. I mean, she was very hesitant at first, but she said yes. And so she went over to Bangladesh, and she was supposed to be flying, I think, to Switzerland, but she was all taped up with this heroin on her body. And I guess at the time they would randomly do body checks. And
Oh
so
my
she got
goodness.
the fucking body check. By the way, I tend to speak like a trucker sometimes. So is that all right?
Yeah, Houston, what's up?
Okay, okay. Excuse my French people. Anyway, so yeah, she got patted down, and well, the lady was apparently that was patting her down was like, what is this? And she said something like, oh, I've just gained a few pounds. Anyway, long story short, they obviously found the drugs, and she was imprisoned. She was gonna be given the death penalty, and then she was
Whoa.
there for life. She was supposed to be there for life, and then um I think she sent letters to whomever was the governor, or maybe I don't remember, someone in the political world sent letters to him. And so anyway, essentially she got pardoned. And after 4.5 years of serving in prison in Bangladesh, she was able to come home.
Wow.
Yeah. I
Did you
actually
ever
still speak to her from time to
Oh,
time. We're
so you
friends.
actually got to meet her?
Yeah, we got to meet, and she's super kind. She's a super kind woman. Yeah. And so we're Facebook friends, and she'll send me messages from time to time. And yeah.
What a interesting bond, right? To actually be in touch with the subject that you are interpreting in
I
television.
know. Yeah. It was really cool to get to know her. And she was on set because, since it's a reenactment, they cut to
Oh,
like interviewing her and her experience. So yeah, I got to meet her on set a few times. Yeah.
that's excellent. So you're working at Geo, then you get the call to work with Robert Rodriguez, and you
Yeah,
said
a
that's it
couple
right
a
there.
couple of years later. And meanwhile, I'm juggling school, and then I'm juggling moving to LA. There was a point there where I was like, you know what? I'm my dreams come first. I'm done with school. So I left the University of Houston. And actually the reason why I left was because I submitted myself to Nuestra Belleza Latina. Have you heard of
Oh
it?
yes, of course.
So it was the very first year of this, show. And my mom's like, you need to do this. And I'm like, okay. So I chose to submit myself for that. And I got through the first round, and essentially was invited to go to Miami. The structure of the show has changed since, but so this first year it was they auditioned hundreds of women, and then they picked 75 women out of those hundreds of women, and then flew them all 75 women to Miami. We all stayed in a hotel, and every single day we were being observed, how we spoke, how we walked, this, that. And then finally, we had to do like this live show where essentially we would walk down the runway, and the judges would then, I guess, eliminate and narrow it down to 12 participants. I did not make the 12, obviously, but
Is that because you were speaking like a trucker?
I mean, I'm probably, and also again, going back to this, the statement of, I didn't quite know myself.
Mm,
I didn't have any type of awareness whatsoever, any type of self-awareness. And I was very terrified, actually. I think I put up a front that I'm confident and I got this and whatever. But truly what was going on within me was, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, constantly comparing myself to other people and creating these false stories in my mind. And so it really, when you're boggled down by all of those stories and all of those emotions, whether they're true or not, obviously now I know they're not, it's difficult to truly embody your truest version of you, if that makes any sense.
and that was a well articulated way to interpret what you were feeling at the time. But at the time, were you able to articulate what you were feeling?
Oh no, not at all. Like I didn't know anything. I had zero idea. Like I did not know anything about the human condition, psychology. Like I didn't realize that, my emotions were basically informing me of something that I had to heal within. Everything was external. That person did this to me. This person did that to me. I'm in this situation because of that situation. Everything
Right.
I was blaming my external circumstances for my life, essentially. And so yeah, so at that time, I'm amongst all these beautiful women, and I couldn't be centered or grounded because I was constantly looking outside of myself, like, oh, she's prettier, she has a bigger butt, she has bigger boobs, she has longer hair, she speaks better than and so I think part of the reason why I probably didn't make it through is just my lack of confidence.
Mm.
So I was there, I was in Miami, I didn't get through. I obviously was sad. And around this time was around the time that I was starting to really love drinking and doing drugs. So I was like, screw this fucking show. So I stayed in Miami for like a week, partying with God knows who, just random ass people, like boat parties, and I don't even remember. I was so out of my mind. And at this point, I had already been out of school for a good couple of weeks that I ended up having to just withdraw from the semester. And so when I got back from Miami to Houston, I was like, I'm going to LA and I'm going to pursue this acting thing for real, for real. And and I did. And pretty quickly I realized I was living on my girlfriend's floor. I wasn't making any money really, so I couldn't pay my fucking bills.
Oh my
I
goodness.
I started working at this one place in Hollywood and making $12 an hour, I think. And so the manager, oh gosh, I love him so much. The manager of that place, he was like, "You can live in my closet if you want." So
I hope it was a walk-in closet.
no, it was one of those like stair, there's a stair above the closet. So very
Oh.
much, very much, very much limited space. And yeah, so I lived in this closet for like 3 months. And I'm paying for this, little closet. And I don't know, after some time, I was like, I think I should go back home. Like this isn't working. And so I'm so glad I listened to that part of me and went back home, went back to Houston and finished my degree. And while I was finishing, I was still auditioning in Houston for things, and which is when I ended up getting Machete and yeah, and other little projects. So yeah, that's my little acting background.
But things started accelerating for you after Machete. Like I know that you had worked also on with Brian Ramirez and all that
Yeah.
crew on Sanitarium, and it was a horror movie, and but that was like an anthology of tales, right? And
Yeah, that was a really cool show. I really, really enjoyed working with them. And um, gosh, Remy, I don't know if you're familiar or if you know
I
who
don't,
Remy is.
no, I do not.
He was producing that show, and so essentially, when I did Machete, I started getting lots of opportunities by just word of mouth, like, oh, Mayra, blah blah blah. But it just so happened that a lot of these opportunities were nudity projects,
Right,
which,
because
because I had been nude and Machete. And because I was so desperate for work and for money and for like kind of, I feel like I had this mask, like I wanted to show people that I was making it. So then therefore I was willing to take any job so that I could keep working, so that I could keep up with the idea that this, actress that's now made it, that was in Machete, is working. And so
right.
in order to keep up with that image, I feel like I totally denied some of my most basic, I suppose, values, which is okay. I forgive myself and there's nothing wrong with being nude. But the fact that I did it over and over and over and over, I mean, I've been nude almost all of my fucking movies, which whatever. But and I wish I could say that I made thousands of dollars, and I didn't. I mean, I was literally accepting pennies for my body. Like
Mm.
now looking back, I'm like $125 a day, and you got to see all this. I mean, I'm at least worth $1,000 a day. Damn it. But anyway,
Millions.
I did it for the sake of the arts, though. Um, but yeah, so sadly, I feel like I was pigeonholed into this category, like, oh, Myra, let's call her, she'll get naked. And rightful, I mean, they had every right to believe that because I would get naked, you know? And at the time I was like, oh, whatever, it's we were born into the world naked. What does it matter, you know? But but again, some of the things that I did, it just wasn't really all that necessary to be in the nude, you know?
Right. But
But
there was one. I remember that you and I met in Los Angeles. We actually didn't. We never met in Texas. We met in LA.
mhm, mhm,
And the way we met was because of our friend Alexander Dragici, Daniel Baldwin, Greg
mhm.
Hanley, and you and I got to spend a lot of time together in that world, spending holidays together, Fourth of July, the beach,
Yeah.
hanging out, wrecking, like terrorizing the neighborhoods together. But once I saw Wisdom,
Mhm.
it shed light on a completely different Mayra Leal. And that to me was like very gritty. It was very a challenging role. And from what I saw, what was it like working on that?
The universe is just so magical. Well, I would like I'm gonna go back a little bit if that's okay
Hmm.
with you,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
back in
And
time.
just to say that the complete title is The Wisdom to Know the Difference, right?
Yes, yeah, wisdom to know the difference, which sadly hasn't really, I don't think ever really made it to anywhere. But it's okay because what came out of that film is far greater, which I essentially that was the beginning of my return to myself, having filmed that.
Oh yes, tell our listeners what this movie's about, how you got to that, and what came afterwards. Because this movie hit my soul in a way that I had never seen you in this light. And after that, it was like, oh my goodness, there's more to Mayra Leal, and I'm
Yeah.
privileged to get to know you personally.
Well, thank you for saying that. And well, so I someone I can't remember. I think Veronica Hernandez, this also producer from San Antonio, Texas. She reached out to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this project? It's called the HOA," and I'm like, "Sure,"
Homeowners Association. I
Oh
remember
my God, that movie. I hope no one ever sees that. Sorry. I mean, anyway, okay, I'm not even going to go there. Um, so it's just because I was so wasted shooting that movie. Like I was either hungover or drunk most of the time. And
in
I
your
was
real life.
in real life shooting this movie, the HOA. And I look so puffy. Again, I think that when we are altering our natural state of being, I think it's very difficult to embody a different character. So it was very inauthentic, this character. I feel anyway. I could see it. So I cringe when I see myself in this movie because I just wasn't well. I was not well. So in that movie, Daniel Baldwin played one of the lead characters. I met him in this movie, and I was out in San Antonio for I think a month. And so during this time I got to really get to know D Balls, I call him, Daniel. Well,
Such a
one of the other actresses on the movie started calling him D Balls, and so anyway, it's kind of just stuck with me. But I love you, D Ball, by the way. He probably, I don't know if he'll listen to this, but so yeah, I got to know him and he got to know me. And like within a couple of weeks, he's like, I have this movie and I think you'd be perfect for it. And meanwhile, I didn't realize that he was observing me and noticing how I would roll onto set, freaking either hungover or still, smelling like booze or maybe still drunk, whatever. And so this script that he wrote was essentially about, this character Bob, who I it's based on a true on true events. And so this person Bob was sober and he would help other people get sober, like in a very gritty way, not really, not going through rehab, but like essentially taking them somewhere and essentially going through the steps and just not the most comfortable setting. Again, it's been so long, I'm going to butcher the story. I haven't seen the movie in so long, but the point of the matter is that he shared this script with me. And when I read it, I was like immediately in tears. And I'm like, yes,
Right.
yes, I would
Because
love
you
to do
play
this.
an addict in this movie.
So I play a heroin addict in this movie, yes. And coincidentally, at the time, it was the height, the peak of my alcoholism, my drug addiction. I
So
mean,
you were so your personal behavior was coinciding with this movie
yeah,
character.
yeah. And so when Daniel shared the script with me, and I said yes to the role, he was like, Myra, this movie is going to change your life. And I'm like, oh, yes, it is. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to win all the awards and it's going to be seen by all these people and it's going to open all of the doors. And finally, I'm going to like leave this box of, playing the sexy role and whatever. And I could finally do work that's meaningful and yada, yada. That's what I was thinking that, he meant. And maybe he did mean that. I don't know. But it actually is interesting that it never really saw the light of day. And but my life did change and in the most magical of ways. I mean, so I HOA's over. A few months later, we start production of Wisdom to Know the Difference, and I'm still drinking and I'm still blowing cocaine up my nose, like, and um but I was able to tap into a part of me that I didn't realize how much pain I didn't realize how much pain was in there. And so I kind of I surprised myself, And so anyway, some magical moments were recorded. And but through this whole process, this whole experience, I can't remember if it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks of filming this show, I got to know Greg Hanley, and I think you're familiar with him. And he was one of the executive producers of Wisdom to Know the Difference. And it turned out that I didn't even realize this, but he had a recovery center in San Antonio and in Malibu. And so, I'm filming this and I'm still obviously Myra, same old shitty behavior, and filming this recovery movie. It's totally contradicted everything. And the movie was over, we finished shooting, and then I go back to my life, and I feel like so much pain came to the surface. So much pain was just there, but I continue to be still same old thinking, same old Myra, still participating in same old shitty behavior. And I think it wasn't till a year later. I mean, that whole year from the time that I finished shooting that to then the following year. I mean, there were some good moments. Actually, there were a lot of really good moments, but the not so good moments were not good. Like I was fucking wasted or totally partying my little tits off and and just not making good decisions. And then a series of things happened in my personal life. My mom had a ruptured brain aneurysm. My relationships were failing. I was in a relationship at that time with someone who I loved very deeply, and things weren't working out. And I just, that ultimately ended. And I was so sad about the ending of that. But then I didn't realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm creating all of this. Like my inability to be a better human, to have more awareness, was really keeping me from having true authentic connections with my family members, with my personal love relationships, with my work, etc. And so yeah, it was a year after I shot that movie that I kind of went down a really really dark road there for a little bit. And I mean, I was kind of concerned for my life. I was having suicidal thoughts. And I couldn't find purpose. And I turned 28, and a couple days after my 28th birthday, I don't know, I had a glimpse of grace it was just randomly sprinkled into my life for a brief moment. And in that moment of clarity, I was like, holy fuck, I need to change my life. And I'm so glad that within that moment, within that thought process, I immediately reached out to I want to say I reached out to Daniel Baldwin and was like, "Hey, I need help." And then he reached out to Alex Dragici, and Alex the next day immediately reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I heard you may need some help. I'll put you on a flight right now." And I'm like, I physically can't be on a plane because I'm so anxious and so like, I mean, I was withdrawing so much. I was trembling. Like I was bruised all over my body from how much I was drinking. Like I wasn't eating. It was, I wasn't the drinker that would wake up every morning and need to have like a shot of whatever or snort something up my nose. I was more of a binge drinker, but I was binging entirely way too much for like a couple of weeks. Like it was, I think there was just maybe like 2 or 3 days of a break during this, like right before I got sober. So my body was totally like, please stop doing this to yourself, you know? And it was totally manifesting as like my body was like, you know, bruised, and I was not looking healthy.
And this was a time that you and I had really become friends and had started spending a lot of time together, but I was not even aware that you were going through all of that.
Again, it was that mask. And I didn't even know that I was going through all this shit. Like, I mean, I really didn't. I thought, oh, well, I'm just partying like every other 24-year-old would party, or I guess I was 27 at the time. To every 27-year-old would party. But I think the difference between me and other people is that I was always the person to be up, you know, till the wee hours of the morning, really. And I was always the last man standing, you know, and like ready to continue. Let's keep this going. Let's go have mimosas, you know, after an hour of sleep. Like, and
Wow, you're like deep in your Saturn return.
yep, I think I was starting to feel the effects of the Saturn return for sure, the Saturn energy. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I didn't even realize that that's what was happening to me. I thought it was all a quote unquote normal, whatever normal is really. That, you know, my behavior was, I thought it was all just, you know, part of life. And so
Right. Because yeah, after that I haven't seen you since then.
I know, yeah, that's so, I thought I had seen you in LA.
Well, I see you in LA, but like at like very little.
Yeah.
Not as much as before.
Yeah. So, so yeah, I mean, most people, I think, could tell that something was going on. I know that my family was like, something is up with you. But, you know, at this time, I obviously, since I was, you know, you don't know what you don't know, and I didn't fucking know anything.
Right.
So
And
I
now
was,
life is mirroring art because like the role you're playing is coinciding with your real life.
yeah. And so, you know, I was very deceptive. I lied my way through that time in my life, you know, totally putting up a front that I was totally good. I'm good. Shit's good. My life is good, you know? And really, I'm like, please, like, get me out of here. You know, I just really wanted to exit the world, to be honest, at that time. And so, anyway, long story short, you know, the movie, again, like I said, I'm not sure what happened post production. It wasn't distributed, and it's unfortunate because I feel like it's one of my favorite projects I was a part of, but at
And
the same
it did
time,
really well in the festival circuit though.
yeah, I did. I was nominated a couple of times for Best Actress, which was really
Congratulations.
cute. Thank you. And yeah, it didn't get distributed, but that's okay. Again, you know, that movie, you know, led me to these human beings that ultimately are the reason why my life is the way it is today. I mean, I obviously did the work and I showed up for myself. They just provided an opportunity. They loved me when I couldn't love myself. They showed me that I could and I would. They showed me that a beautiful life beyond your wildest dreams is fucking possible. And I'm sorry I get so emotional. I did
No,
ayahuasca a few weeks ago, and my heart is totally just fucking open. So I don't know if you're familiar with
oh,
ayahuasca.
I'm very familiar, but I haven't done it yet. So one
And
day I will.
that's a different conversation. It's brutal.
Yes. That's one of those things that you can't have a conversation about. You just have to experience it.
Yeah,
But
totally. Yeah. So yeah, I mean they showed me, they just, oh God. Anyway, yeah, they loved me when I couldn't, and so because of them, I was able to go to this rehab, um, you know, ultimately. So I guess to go back, so after I shot that movie, it took a year before I realized like, oh shit, I need to change my life. And so then I reached out to Daniel. Daniel reached out to Alex. Alex was like, we're going to put you on a plane ride. I'm like, nope, I can't. I'm too anxious. So I had a friend drive me to rehab in San Antonio from Houston. And I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell friends. I just was like, I'm doing this. I didn't want anyone to deter me from my decision, to
right,
tell me, no, you really don't have a problem, because seemingly, like, again, I wouldn't wake up and have out like a shot of alcohol like the first thing in the morning. It was more so I was more of a party girl, but it was beginning to really affect my life, in a not so good way. And so I went to this rehab that's owned by Mr. Greg Hanley, and yeah, and the rest is history. I've never looked back. This was 6.5 years ago, and I just continued to move forward. I left that part of me behind, and I mean, I'm so grateful for that version of me. I needed to experience that version of me to be where I am today. Without her,
yes,
I wouldn't be this version of me.
right. Because
Um,
you went to the dark side.
yes, the dark side. And it's interesting. Like, I so in AA they say, you're on, you have the pink cloud for like 6 to 9 months or so, and I did. I felt so happy, so joyful. We're such magical beings, and oh my goodness, life is great and beautiful and all the wondrous things, for like 6 to 9 months. I was like on cloud nine, just loving life. And so, I didn't realize that alcohol is actually not the problem, So I go to rehab thinking, okay, I'm going to remove this problem, which is alcohol, and my life is going to be beautiful and amazing, and I'm going to attract all the magical things of the world, just by taking this thing out of my life. Well, after 9 or so months of sobriety, I was smacked in the face essentially with reality. And I realized then that, alcoholism and drug addiction, et cetera, is just a symptom of a deeper rooted problem. There was shit within me that I had, either I didn't know that existed within me, or I was just suppressing or totally trying to convince myself that, oh, it didn't matter, that didn't affect me, that doesn't matter, blah blah blah, and I didn't have any idea that we had an that well, I really love these whole inner child, theories. Like,
Oh yes.
we all possess a little inner child in there that's most likely wounded from childhood experiences, etc. And all of us have some level of trauma, whether it be big or super small. And I think most of my trauma is really little, experiences, events, nothing major, nothing crazy. I think my biggest inner child wound is I felt that as a child, I needed a little extra nurture and care and love. And, you're Latino.
Hmm.
Culturally, I don't want to say all Latinos, but my parents and other friends' parents, like, they weren't taught to be loving and nurturing and affectionate and caring. And yes, mijo, you can do well. That's how my parents weren't very, they just didn't have that emotional intelligence. And so, and I'm not mad at them. I don't blame them. I love them. And I know that, this was, I believe, that we come into this whole existence, having chosen our parents and our path. And this is all part of my path and part of my journey. So I love my parents so deeply, and they were doing the best that they could with what they knew, you know? And so, but it did create this story. Like, I developed a coping mechanism around their inability to show me love, nurture, care, protection. So the coping mechanism was, oh, they're not loving me or protecting me or nurturing me in the way that I need. There must be something wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. I'm not lovable. You know, these were all the stories that were created in childhood that then, now looking back at my life, it's like, oh, that makes sense why that happened. And, you know, I was bullied at age 12 for a couple of years, and that was very traumatizing for me. So that experience explains why I was always constantly people pleasing in my adult life. I wanted
Right.
everybody to fucking like me. I couldn't handle people not liking me. And it all kind of stemmed from whatever story I created in my subconscious mind around that time, that I was 12 and being bullied, you know?
Right. Because
And
then we take these unresolved traumas into adulthood. And as Latin culture, we are very affectionate. We're very lovey-dovey, but I was never taught by my family how to emotional manage as a child, how
mhm,
to actually deal with rupture and repair, how to respond instead of react, right? Like these are
right.
very important like lessons that aren't really taught and
Yeah,
sometimes they're suppressed.
totally. Yeah. And so that's essentially what I was doing most of my life, is just suppressing emotions. And why? You know, you got to think like, what happened in your childhood experiences that make you believe now in adult life that you are not, it's not okay to voice the way that you feel, or you invalidate your emotions. You tell yourself, oh no, you shouldn't be feeling that way, so we're going to suppress it, or let me ignore. Like, why? You know? And so I started questioning that, like asking myself, you know, those deeper questions, like, what happened? Why do I invalidate myself all the time? And so, and it turns out that as a child, you know, when my mom would slap me across the face, or, you know, freaking, she loved grabbing the ear area, fucking
Oof.
painful. Or, you know,
Yes,
getting the
love.
chancla or the belt or the wire
Oh.
fucking hanger. I mean, and again, you know, they did what they were taught. Like, they're just, that's just
Right,
like,
and it's all programming, right?
exactly. That's what they thought was best for, you know, the situation that they were faced with. And so there's no, I love my parents so, so much. And I'm so grateful for them. So I just feel like I needed to say that. But
And it's a great point because now you're talking about going, like now you're transitioning from rehab, right, into a much deeper deconstruction of your psyche that has nothing to do with actual substances, but your own
yeah.
psychology, your own emotion.
Yes, yes. But it took me some time. It took me some time. So I guess that's what I was, you know, what I wanted to speak to was, after I got sober and after I came down from this cloud nine, you know, pink cloud that they call, I started feeling miserable again. Miserable. I mean, crying all the time, not understanding why my acting career wasn't panning out the way that I wanted it to, you know, getting so close and tasting it, but then not get, you know, then being told, oh no, sorry, you were unpinned or whatever the fuck. And really, so what was going on then was that I was expecting my external circumstances to bring happiness into my life. And because the
Oh,
external
yes.
circumstances were not at all going the way that I was expecting them to go, I was creating suffering for myself. So I was in a miserable fucking place, dark fucking place. I mean, I romanticize about suicide again and again and again. And I'm sober and I'm thinking I fucking got sober to enjoy life, to feel happy and excited and blissful. You know, I got into a relationship like 2 years into sobriety. And I'm like, at first it was great. And I thought, okay, this is what I needed. You know, this is the thing. Like, this is what's going to really put a little bow on my life. And a few months into it, that program of not being worthy, not being not enough, not being lovable, I'm going to be abandoned, you know, I'm going to be rejected. All of that programming came up to the surface. And so when you have all that fucking programming, you're incapable of seeing what's actually going on outside of you. You know, you see through this lens of whatever the story, whatever the program is. And so I was in this relationship, but kept blaming this guy, like, oh, you're going to cheat on me and you're going to this and you're going to leave me. And I couldn't fucking be present because I was taken by all of this programming. And
Right.
I was seeing out this lens. And so what I was seeing was literally affirming my thought process, but it's because that was my perception. Like that was like the lens that I was seeing through, if that makes any sense. So this relationship that seemingly, you know, you would think, you know, I'd be happy and blissed out and whatever, that whole honeymoon phase faded pretty quickly. And then I just started this whole new like inner turmoil, you know. So the career is not panning out, this relationship situation's not panning out. But so I stay in the relationship, you know, as still the old version of me, you know, so with the old thinking, um, trying to create a different outcome, but I'm still thinking the same thoughts that I've been thinking most of my life, which is I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, this, that, blah, 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 you know? So it took me, I want to say, at least 4 years of sobriety to finally start asking myself, like, we literally create the same shit over and over. Like, what's the common denominator here? And it was me. Oh my gosh, that was such a big
Oh
aha
God.
moment for me. I was like, holy fucking shit, it's me. I'm responsible, you know? So that was a big moment. And ever since then, I've been on this quest to just continue to unpeel the layers of the onion. And anyway, I feel like I'm talking too much. Go
No, no,
ahead.
you're talking. This is great. This is actually the best part because, like, the transition, like your credits of movies and televisions continue to grow, but this part of you now has. I feel like the hardest thing to do is confront yourself,
Mm,
and we're
mhm,
always aware. Like, I feel that a lot of people, right, at least my experience, like, and even myself, for a long time I was self-aware of who I was and my behavior,
mm,
but it took a long time to actually self-accept,
mm.
and that was the key to start changing. Because a lot of the things that you described
Yeah.
I feel all the time: abandonment, self-loathing,
Mm.
low self-esteem, highs and lows, right? You get excited for things and then you live in fear. So you actually start to sabotage things around you. And you do figure out, like, the breakthrough that you discover where it's like, it's all my doing. I've gone through something similar and it's not pleasant.
It's not. I mean, we don't want to accept that it's easier to blame our external circumstances for why
Absolutely.
we are in the position that we're in. You know, it's so hard to accept, like, holy fuck, me? You mean I'm the creator of this shitty external experience? No fucking way, you know? And and I still like sometimes, I mean, it's so hard, you know, having the awareness that I have now. It's I have these moments where I laugh at myself because, you know, if I'm experiencing a not so feel good experience, like instinctively I want to be like, well, that's because of blah 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 outside of me, you know. But then I'm like, okay, no, it's not. What are we doing? Let's bring it back to the self. Let's reel it in. Let's go back into the files. What's going on? What can we delete from
Right.
the from this operating system, human operating system that's no longer fucking working? So yeah, so I have to. It's a good place to be in, to know that I'm the one responsible, but it fucking kind of sucks sometimes. And I can get a little too introspective and go down the path of search for fucking answers, that I could totally keep myself from the real world or connecting with other humans, because I'm like, no, I need to figure this out. I need
Right.
to fucking figure it out, and I get super obsessive about it. But I'm doing my best to let go, which is what Aya taught me. Let fucking go and surrender, please.
So earlier you were mentioning that you were working on the Myra project, and I find it very interesting that your name is Mayra Leal because Leal means loyalty
Yeah.
in Spanish. So for you to be loyal to yourself, and not in a conceited or egocentric way, but to save your own life and to create a different life. And what's it been like for you now that you are not working in show business and you are working you're working in a different world and you're living a completely different life in a place that that you've never lived in before? What's it been like for you lately?
I feel really grateful for the life that I've created or co-created. I can't take the responsibility for it. I really do believe that there is a higher order of things that's orchestrating all of the experiences in my life. So I can't take credit, but I'm in a really, really good place. I mean, it's interesting that I was pursuing the whole acting thing for so long. I mean, I think I was doing it for 13 years, and I thought that that was the thing that I was going to do for the rest of my life. And to wake up one day, I mean, can you freaking imagine you wake up one day and you're like, I don't fucking want to do this anymore. It was really, really scary, really frightening for me because that's all I knew. I mean, sure, I had a degree, but at this point it had been like 9 years since I had graduated college. Like, I didn't know anything about communication or advertising. I'm sure I could figure it out, but it was just a really intimidating place to be in, to have fallen out of love with the entertainment industry, and then be in the space of like, but what do I do now? And so, but again, the higher order of things, I trust in this statement. When it's difficult or painful or creates suffering, it's coming from the ego. And when you're in flow, it's coming from the universe. And
Yes.
so when I chose to leave Los Angeles because I just didn't find purpose in LA any longer. I mean, I had like 4 jobs, barely making ends meet. I was in a relationship that just really truly wasn't nourishing me in the way that I wanted it to nourish me. Though now I realize that I was projecting my emotional dependency onto this partner, my codependency, my emotional dependency, needing to be nurtured, cared for, loved outside of me because I couldn't provide that for myself. Me projecting all of that is why I didn't feel nourished. So maybe now with this mentality, that relationship would have worked out. But anyway, it taught me all of that. Like, that relationship was the beginning of me realizing like, oh, this is interesting. That relationship is what made me realize like I am the common denominator of this whole experience here. But anyway, I forgot where I was going with all of that, but
Oh, we were talking about how we're living a different life and that you fell out of love with the industry
oh
and you had to go do something else.
yeah, so I left LA because, like career-wise, I wasn't fulfilled. Relationship-wise, I wasn't fulfilled. My mom disabled in Houston. I thought I could go be of service to her. At least, maybe being of service, I'll feel better about myself.
Oh, that's right. Because your family was impacted by Hurricane Harvey, right?
They were impacted by Hurricane Harvey, yes, but my mom had a
The
ruptured brain aneurysm like 6 years ago. And so she's a really healthy disabled woman, but she's
Mhm.
very disabled.
Mm.
Um, and so,
Well,
so yeah, so
lots of love to your mommy.
thank you. It's received. She's the cutest. And so yeah, so I just was like, I think I need to go back to Houston. And so I moved to Houston, um, and I didn't know what to do with myself. Like, I thought that me taking care of my mom was going to bring fulfillment, but I still, again, if I had the mentality that I have now, maybe that whole situation would have been different, but I was still very unhappy and searching for external experiences to fulfill me and nourish me, but it just doesn't fucking work. Like you can't depend on people, places, and things outside of yourself to find nourishment, happiness, blissfulness, joy. Like it'll bring all that temporarily, but it's not long
Yeah,
term.
I completely agree. And that's been one of the most that's been one of the blessings of this pandemic, where it's like it's giving people time to actually do some inner work if they choose to.
Right. No, yeah. I feel like the universe is like, okay, you haven't been paying attention to the signals of your body and the emotions that keep coming up. You know what? Let's create a pandemic. It'll force people to stay indoors and force people to look within.
Exactly.
No. Who knows? Anyway, so yeah, so I moved to Houston, and I'm not in a good place, and my girlfriend, coincidentally, she had moved from Colombia to Medellin for a brief moment in time. I mean, like when I start dissecting all of this, it's just so crazy how all of these stars totally align. Like my girlfriend had been living in Medellin, Colombia forever, and then she decides to come to Houston at this specific time. So it was like December of I think 2018. And anyway, we start slanging tacos. We start making tacos at a bar. We started a taco business because she has a taco business in Medellin, Colombia. So we started a taco business, and I'm slinging tacos with her, and we're both triggering each other like crazy. We both have like control issues. I love you, Jessica. And so yeah, we were just at each other's throats a lot, and there's a lot of ego going on in there. And so I think towards the end of the month that we started this little taco project, we were like, this isn't gonna work. I mean, we weren't making money, and then our friendship was totally like on the line. But on one of the last taco slinging days, her mother came in with her neighbor, and that neighbor happened to be a United flight attendant. And so he started talking to me about, flight attendant world. And at this time, I'm, like still kind of like, what am I going to do with myself? I can't, like, this taco thing isn't working. I need to make money, blah. And so, but he's sharing, all this stuff about flight attendant world. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah. I mean, I guess I've, thought about doing that. Like, this is all internal dialogue as he's speaking to me about his journey and his life as a flight attendant. And long story short, he's like, if you're interested in applying, you're welcome to take my number. I'll walk you through the process. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah. Sounds good. And a couple of weeks went by, and I still hadn't done anything with this opportunity. And one day I'm driving, and it just like pops into my head like, oh, you should apply for this position. And so I went home, I did the thing, I applied. I mean, everything was boom, 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 boom. I mean, the most inflow I think I've ever been in my whole life. Like it just all freaking happened and aligned and fit. And next thing you know, I'm a fucking flight attendant. I'm like, how did this happen? Oh my God. And I'm traveling the world and things I've always wanted to do. I love Italian culture, and I got to go to Rome, and I went to Brussels, and I've been to so many different places in Mexico. And
That's right, because I noticed, I was like, where is Mayra? Like, she living abroad? I was like, I don't know where she's going, but I love all her pictures from different countries and her travels. I'm jealous.
oh yeah, well, it was because of the job, and I got to experience so many amazing states here in the United States. And oh my gosh, I fell in love with Bend, Oregon, and Boulder, Colorado, and Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Oh my gosh, that place is magical. So I became this flight attendant, and yeah, and so I have this new career, and but meanwhile, I'm during this time still working pretty heavily on myself, and still asking the deeper questions, etc. And I found myself, sometime early, or no, at the end of last year, found myself starting to feel a little sad again, and like,
Mm.
But the good news about my sadness is that every time I'm faced with sadness or grief or a challenge or whatever it is, like I don't go outside of myself searching for answers. I'm like, all right, let's bring it in. Let's ask some more questions.
Right,
What's
because now you're starting. Now you're taking everything you've learned and the techniques to self-assess, and I think that's important.
Yeah, totally. So I came into a space of like finally being grateful for what I had. Like, oh wow, I'm so grateful for my job and oh my goodness, I'm a flight attendant, I get to travel and I'm not making a lot of money, but I'm making money and I was starting to like really understand what it means to like instead of wishing for what you want or wish you had to really find gratitude in what you do and at that time like there was actually so much that I actually had and I was like wow this is awesome I was starting to really be in love with my life and continuing the inner healing and I don't know anyway the point is that I feel that when you can elevate yourself, mind, body, and soul, your external circumstances start to change because vibrationally you are vibrating at a way higher frequency. So, whatever doesn't match in your external world is going to fall off, in my experience, anyway.
Oh my goodness, very well said. Very
And
well said.
yeah, thank you. And so I don't know, I want to say manifested, but this new amazing opportunity came into my existence. And I mean, I can't really divulge of too much information, but essentially I became a private flight attendant after this whole period of time where I was like, I feel like in self-healing boot camp. And then all of a sudden I was gifted with this beautiful new opportunity. So
Oh my goodness, that's
now
amazing.
I'm still a flight attendant flying privately. And to answer your question, totally took me 45 minutes to get to your question. I
I
apologize.
love it though. Wait, what was the answer to the question?
The answer to the question is I'm doing really good.
Yes, exactly. I'm glad you found yourself, especially after such a colorful and after a colorful journey with highs and lows and crazy terrain. Like you've been from coast to coast and around the world, and I'm glad that you found yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's so wonderful to hear that you're on a similar path, of introspection and self-healing. I mean, I tell people all the time without trying to force this information onto them, but I'm like, life is beautiful and magical and full of wondrous serendipitous moments, but you have to be willing to see, like, to believe that, like if you don't believe in magic, magic isn't going to happen.
Right.
But if you can just give yourself, even if it feels strange, but just give yourself the opportunity to like envision and dream out a magical experience. Like that's where I feel, begin to create what we're dreaming up or envisioning, etc., like from that space. But like if you're like, oh yeah, magic doesn't exist, and oh yeah, like miraculous moments are not real, and well yeah, what you think that's
Right.
your external experience is going to match what you're thinking. Like our thoughts are fucking powerful. So um
Absolutely.
anyway, I try not to force people with this information, but like if you just change the way that you think, your external world will just look differently
Yeah, I
in,
don't. I
in a good.
agree. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
I said I do agree that forcing this on people
Yeah.
it's risky because they have to be willing to be open minded and accept. And the thing that I find very brave on your behalf is that you recognize that you had something that you needed help with and you asked for help and you accepted help, and
Yeah.
then you took all your experiences and then you started helping others, which I think is so noble and amazing, and I want to congratulate you personally.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I don't know how much help I've helped, or I don't know how much help I've actually provided. But yeah, I mean, I think now with where I'm at and what I've learned and how much I've evolved and transformed, whatever, anyway, it makes me laugh when I say these things, but it's true. I definitely feel different. And I just want to say also though that life does happen and challenges do come up. But like when challenges come up for me, I don't want to say I get excited, but I'm like, okay, there's something here for me to learn and to heal, and woohoo, I can't wait to get to the other side of that.
Exactly.
So life keeps happening, but there's just you're just able to more gracefully get through those challenges with more ease and more groundedness and more centeredness. But yeah, so now being where I'm at, I often think like I would be doing humanity a disservice if I didn't share my story, because I think it is important to share with people what is possible. Like I was in the pits of fucking hell and I wanted to kill myself, and now I'm like, life is wonderful and beautiful and magic. And like, how does that fucking happen? Like, I'm not on drugs. I'm not on antidepressants. Like, the only drug I take is caffeine, which is
Me
probably
too.
well, caffeine. And I'm a big proponent of plant medicine. So I
Oh
mean,
yes.
not ganja, but I do love my psilocybin and ayahuasca. Well, I took ayahuasca once, and I don't know if I'll ever do it again.
I've never tried it. I
So,
figured if I ever do, I might have a good reason, but I'm not the first in line.
yeah, it's it's definitely brutal, but everybody has their individual experiences, and so um, I had a really difficult time with it. It was so difficult, it was magical, but I definitely encourage people to just if you're called to move towards that medicine, to you know um, do it with an open mind, um, and yeah, my experience was individual to me, and everybody has their own personal experience. So I don't want to deter anyone from trying it, but it was definitely, definitely brutal. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at in life currently, toying with the idea of sharing the good old story. But I have moments where I'm like, well, who fucking cares anyway, really?
Well,
And
you care,
but
and your
yes, but I
family
care.
cares. And I feel that once you share your story, you never know, like it's gonna hit somebody and it's gonna impact them. And I feel that even like on this serendipitous moment, I didn't even realize that today is
Hmm.
International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day. Yeah,
What?
so it's I'm glad that you're still with us. And
Oh, I know. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful that, I mean, well, suicidal thoughts are suicidal thoughts, and I was definitely
right.
romanticizing about it. But I mean, I think deep down I knew that I didn't have the courage to do it, but I was definitely, I mean, that's a really, really dark place to be in if you're like, trying to figure out which would be the best possible method of suicide. Should I
Right.
drink poison? Should I hang myself?
And I
And
think
it's obviously not a laughing matter, but
But I think that's why it's important to share your story, because it's important to know that we can ask for help and we should ask for help. And I also feel that if someone asks us for help, like we have this duty to hold space and honor that.
yes, yes. I mean, I love what Ram Dass says. We're all just walking each other home. We're
Oh yes,
all
that's a good one.
just walking each other home. And I think what I understand from that statement is that we're all mirrors of each other. We're all mirroring one another.
Right.
I love also that he says, we're all God in drag. Like we're all the universe just dressed up with, walking around with our own fucking melodramas, our own fucking crazy stories, but really at our core we're the universe experiencing itself.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, because we are mirrors of one another, we're able to see ourselves in other people. And we think, oh, that person's annoying. But really, you're looking at yourself. And so, there's a part of you that maybe you are ignoring, not addressing, or you'd like to possess that this other person possesses, but what comes up for you is, this emotional response, which is a negative emotional response. And you're like, I don't like that person or whatever. But really they're just mirroring something that you possess within you back to you. And so anyway, the point is that since we're all mirrors of each other, that's why to me it makes sense that we're walking each other home, because we're helping each other heal. If obviously we allow, the healing,
Mm-hmm.
and allow, are open to the idea that, you're healing me and I'm helping heal you. Um,
And
and
that's why I wanted to get you on the mic today, because I knew just from like spending time with you and seeing what you've done, I knew there was more to you than meets the eye. And I was always very curious and wanted to know your story. So I want to thank you for sharing
yeah. Yeah.
and being so transparent and honest and brave. I find it
Oh,
inspiring, and I'm honored to have been able to capture this moment in this conversation. And I want to thank you for being on here today.
oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I'm glad you reached out, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to share my deepest truths. And we shall continue the conversation, I suppose, some other time. I'm sure we're totally like 3 hours in.
I definitely want to be back in your life, and I'm glad that we found each other again, even though it took a pandemic. And
I
but I'm
know. Yeah.
I'm grateful for technology that we can see each other's faces.
I know.
As these Texas kids out in the world trying to
I
walk
know.
each other home.
Yes. Oh, I'm sending you a big old virtual hug.
Yeah, abrazos.
Thank you again. I'm sending so much love to you. And if you're good, then I think I can be complete. I can be complete with
Yes.
what I've shared. Of
Awesome. Thank you so much. And
course.
I
My pleasure.
appreciate it.
And honestly, I'm so excited for all the things that you're doing in the world. This is so awesome that you moved towards podcasting. So cool. And yeah, so I'm glad that you
Yeah, I feel passionate about podcasts. I felt like this is a great way to capture conversations to share with others, that people can take action in their lives by the information they learn through this medium.
it's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you again for having me, and keep shining.
Thank you. And of
Mwah.
course, if there's anything I can help you with on your, if you want to do anything in this realm, let me know. You can always pick my brain. I'm here for you.
Totally. Thank you. And clearly, I'm terrible at technology, really. And before we started this podcast, we were having some technical things come up, and it seems there's a lot of different moving parts, it seems like, to
Exactly.
really get this going. But anyway, I shall have lots of questions for you if I do decide to move towards podcasting.
For sure.
All right. Te
Well,
quiero. Mwah,
I love
mwah.
you too.
All
Bye.
right.
Have a
Have a
great
good
weekend.
day. I'll talk to you soon.
Ciao.
Okay. Nos vemos.
Nos vemos.
Mwah, mwah.